So let me show you a couple items that I actually used from my go bag or emergency kit. A couple weeks ago, it was in February 2014. Atlanta had a little ice storm, and because of the conditions and the timing, it caught a lot of people off guard. And the ground was warm, so the snow came down, and then it was freezing cold air, and it immediately iced. So it was literally like an ice rink in a lot of places, and I, like a lot of people, got stuck in it. I was up on the north side of town, and my car is not suited for snow driving very much, and certainly not ice driving. So I had a decision to make, and I got off the freeway and ended up at a restaurant by a mall. So fortunately, though, kind of fast forward, I ended up sleeping in my car, and thousands of people slept in their car that night, just simply because traffic was gridlock and there was nowhere to go and nobody could go anywhere and there was no grip. So the other thing that night is it was 11 degrees or 10 degrees that night in some places, so it was really cold. But anyway, I wanted to show you some of the stuff I had in my bag and in my trunk, along with my other videos you'll see that came in handy, and I actually used them. So a couple things. First of all is, and I recommend, this is kind of a lesson for everybody, I recommend anybody in a cold climate have one of these at minimum. This is a nice wool blanket. Now they come in different percentages of wool. This one is 70% wool, and this weighs 3 pounds, and it's 60 inches by 80 inches. So it's pretty big, it's pretty heavy, and I actually pulled this out and used it, and it was quite warm. The other thing I keep in the trunk too with my bag is some warm clothes for this type of a thing. I actually use these. These are some socks I have for skiing and snowboarding, specifically for that. They are very long, and they're a wool blend, so they're very warm. The thing about wool is it keeps you warm even when it's wet. So that's an important thing to have, is wool. And that's why a lot of ski socks and outdoor clothing is made of wool for snowy and wet environments. So definitely look for wool, heavy content of wool. I actually put these on. It was great. I was stuck wearing a suit, which was actually made of wool, but it was very light, so it wasn't the most comfortable thing. The other thing I keep in there is a long underwear top, long sleeve, and this thing is very warm. On the inside is kind of a nice fleecy like cotton, and this by itself is extremely warm. So I always keep that in the trunk, and I use this for skiing as well, and it's awesome. These pants I keep, these are these kind of outdoor hiking pants that zip off into shorts. Now these are not particularly warm, but they were just something to change into and get out of my dress clothes. And like I said in my other video, you don't know where you're going to be. You could be wearing a suit like I was, which is kind of impractical in those cases. But anyway, it was just a comfort issue, and I swapped these out, which was great. And I also keep a pair of these gloves. These are actually for mountain biking, but they're warm, and they do the job. And of course I have a wool hat. So again, wool is the theme here. Now I didn't have these, but I wish I did. I recommend, and I usually have an extra pair of sneakers in the trunk, or some kind of boots or something that's rugged that you can go off the road on. And I was wearing my suit shoes, so cap-toed loafers or whatever. They were not great on the ice, I can tell you that, and I kind of wish I had these, but it wasn't the end of the world either. But if I had to walk home, 5 miles or something, I would have wanted to have these. But definitely recommend, your old pair of tennis shoes or old pair of boots, keep them in your trunk along with those things. Because you could have flip-flops on, you could have suit shoes on or something completely ridiculous, or for girls, heels and things like that. So keep these in there with your stuff. The other thing I actually used, which I had in my video, is this extra cell phone battery. Now my car was able to run for a while, and I was able to charge, but and this is another thing too. My car actually experienced electrical problems during this, running the car all night, and it kind of aggravated it with the weather and the coldness. So there was a point where I would shut the car off, and it would leave the accessories on, and it drained the battery, and then it wouldn't start up again. So there I am sitting in 10-degree weather, and now the car won't start. Fortunately for me, there were some people stranded next to me, sleeping in their cars, and the next time they got out of the car, I knocked on the door, And I had jumper cables. So that's another item. Have jumper cables in your car. If your car breaks down, don't rely on somebody else to have jumper cables. And if you called AAA in this weather, there is zero chance they're going to get to you. Zero. So you got to think about it. If you're in your area or anywhere that you travel and you're stuck and your car dies and no one can get to you and you can't go anywhere, what are you going to do? What's your last, what's your last piece of security? And with me, I was plenty warm, even though it was 10 degrees. It was not totally comfortable, but being in a car closed and having this clothing and blanket, it was okay. But a lot of people, I can imagine, especially with kids, are not prepared for that, and they just assume that somebody can come get them or whatever, and this is not the case here. Now, obviously, I was kind of near civilization, so even though businesses were not open, I could have thrown a brick through a window and gotten into a building, that kind of thing. But that's like a last, resort. So extra cell phone battery was great, and it was charged, ready to go. And this is the bag I usually have in my trunk. If you look at my other videos, I'll have the link there. You can see what else is on there. But this really is meant to be a lesson learned that I'm glad I had this stuff in there. If I didn't, I would at minimum been very uncomfortable and very worried. And at worst case, I would have had a big problem keeping warm or resulting to something drastic. But even in this bag, I had a shelter. I could have put up kind of a tarp tent with an emergency blanket, and I have a saw and all kinds of things in here. I could have built a fire and sawed a tree down. I mean that kind of stuff if I had to. It wasn't that drastic, but I could imagine a lot of the panic out there with people on the road. So moral of the story is, if you're in a cold environment at all or travel in cold environments, have something like this in your car. Always think about the coldest it can possibly get, you not being able to go anywhere, and no one being able to get to you. What are you going to do? Can you stay there? I was in my car for over 24 hours simply because the ice was an ice rink, and there's absolutely no way. Most vehicles, 90%, couldn't go anywhere. And the few that could, were like four-wheel drive vehicles on treated roads. But once they got on the ice even, it was very difficult. So that's it. I hope that helps, and good luck to everybody.